Hello and welcome to Let's Talk, a series of podcasts produced by the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation on the issues that matter to us, the issues that we know matter to you too. Substance use prevention, research, treatment for addiction, recovery management, education, and advocacy. I'm your host, William Moyers, and today I'm joined by the very venerable colleague, Jerry Moe, the Executive Director of the National Children's Program. Jerry, welcome.
William, it's great to be here with you.
Always good to be with you too, Jerry. And whenever we get together, we talk about things like children and substances and children who grow up in families with substances, and we talk about children recovering from substances. But today we're going to talk about something that we've never talked about before, and it involves Big Bird and Elmo and Bert and Ernie. Tell us more.
Yes, it does. So the story is, I was here in Minnesota. It would have been in August of 2018, and I'm at the airport going home, and I get an email from our dear friend and colleague, Sis Wenger.
Oh, yes.
At the National Association for Children of Addiction.
She's been a big advocate for children for decades.
She's carried the torch and led the way for all of us. And the email said that Sesame Street wanted to talk to me.
Wanted to talk to you.
Wanted to talk to me. And I just about came out of my skin. Are you kidding me, sis? Don't fool around. Wow. This is too close to my heart. And so I called, and what it was about was the whole issue of addiction in kids. So Sesame Street in Communities, it partners with agencies that work with children all across the United States. And about 18 months ago, they did a needs assessment. So they surveyed all of the professionals and all of the lay people who work with young people, saying, what are the biggest issues that children face today that you don't have enough resources for, especially resources from a child's perspective? They came up with three things: homelessness, foster care, and addiction. And so about a year ago, Sesame Street introduced a Muppet, beautiful little girl named Lily, who is homeless. Her family is homeless. About 6 months ago, Sesame Street introduced another Muppet, and this little girl's named Karli, and Karli was in foster care. And so what I have been working on with all of the staff of the Hazel and Betty Ford Children's Program is the introduction of a brand new Muppet. Now, it will debut on October 9th, 2019 on the NBC Nightly News.
Oh, a national debut.
A national debut. And we have worked with Sesame Street on script development, on storyline. I mean, I was actually on set, and William, that's like bucket list stuff for me. And was there when we filmed the first scene of this beautiful little girl with Elmo and Chris from Mr. Hooper's store. And we filmed this strong and courageous and powerful little girl talking about her mom's addiction for the first time in her life.
Incredible. Incredible. What was that like?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. I have never been on the set. I've never been in a room. There were about 60 people there, all brilliant, passionate folks that love kids. And they filmed the scene. And then we talked about it. And I said, there's one thing that got missed, though. And this is the kind of collaboration and partnership we brought to the table. Even though this little girl is good friends with Elmo and likes Chris because Chris is a friend of this little girl's mom, when she was talking about it, what they failed to realize is that the first time a child talks about addiction in the family, even among people that she loves and adores, there's still there's that push-pull, there's that conflict, there's vulnerability in that maybe I'm betraying my mom and dad, maybe I'm betraying the family secret. So they filmed it again, and the Muppeteer was able to convey that sense of, geez, is this the right thing to do? How are they going to respond? And it was precious, William, because that little Muppet girl went from being vulnerable and uncertain, and as Elmo and Chris gave her positive reinforcement and validation, you could see the excitement grow in her, and it was just captured in a wonderful way.
Sesame Street has been around for decades. Why did it take until now for this collaboration to occur, for this awareness around the impact that addiction plays in families? Why only did it happen now?
Well, as Hazelden celebrates its 70th anniversary, for Sesame Street, this is its 50th year.
Amazing.
And a few years back, the folks at Sesame Street really listened to their partners and began to introduce this concept of trauma and how trauma impacts young kids. And so while Sesame Street was always around to teach social skills and colors and shapes and sizes and beginning of numbers and letters of the alphabet, I think they realized a few years back especially that to be trauma informed and to really make sure that they look at this as an issue that can really impede a little child's growth and development. So, and they listened and they responded accordingly. I mean, one of the things that I love about what they did with the foster care initiative and the way that they frame things in such a child-friendly way is they call foster parents for now parents.
For now parents.
So those are your parents for now. Doesn't mean you can't someday go back to your mom and dad. And so always doing things in an incredibly sensitive way. And the connection, what happened was, Sesame Street in their research found an activity called the 7 C's. And the activity had been used so many times, they took, on the bottom of the activity, they took out the copyright and who created the activity. And so they went to Sis Wenger and said, who did this? And they said, well, you need to talk with Jerry Moe. And they saw it and they loved it because it was so child-friendly and it was so simple. So those first 3 C's actually come from Al-Anon family groups. I didn't cause it, and I can't control it, and I can't cure it. But in working with boys and girls all these years, what I realized after a while, sometimes it takes me a while to learn from the boys and girls, is that those 3 C's tell us what we can't do, but they don't necessarily provide children, even little ones, with a roadmap. And so those last 4 C's, but I can't help take care of myself. There's some things I can do for me. Communicating feelings, so talking about how I feel with people I feel safe and I trust. Like a little Muppet girl talking to Elmo and Chris. Making healthy choices. And celebrating me, celebrating all my beauty and goodness.
So turning it around into a positive.
Turning it around into a positive, and so with Sesame Street, the 7 C's is really the central activity that everything else is going to be built around. So this little Muppet girl is going to learn the 7 C's and struggle with some of them and learn and grow with the other ones. So she can teach, little kids all around things that they can do for self-care, even if a mom or a dad or a grandparent or an older brother or sister gets trapped by addiction.
You've been a national advocate, the national advocate, I must add, for children and wellness in children despite addiction and trauma and mental illness in families. You've been the nation's #1 advocate for many, many years now. When I first came into this field in 1996, I remember meeting you and knowing about you and your legacy already, and that was a long time ago. And of course, you founded the children's program at the Betty Ford Center, which is now expanding nationally. What is the impact, do you think, that this relationship, this collaboration with Sesame Street is going to have on your work and on our colleagues' work at the children's program at the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation?
Now, it's funny, William, and much like you, I believe, because I know you well, so much of my time is spent on, okay, what's next? Where do I need to go next? What do we need to talk about next? What do we need to do? And honestly, it's only been in the last couple of months that I've realized how big this collaboration and partnership is with Sesame Street. Mrs. Ford would always say to me, pick your partners wisely because they say so much about who you are. So I think the impact that this can have is huge. The one piece that I didn't share with you is there's going to be, Sesame Street is going to have online resources just focused to this issue. So there'll be a section for parents and grandparents, but there'll be a section for teachers and social workers and therapists, Children's Protective Service workers, with ways that they can make a difference. Sesame Street had the idea, what about if we go find someone who has a substance use disorder and who's recovering and who now works with these boys and girls and have them tell their story? And I listened to that and I said, that's a great idea. But how about if we made that a person who grew up in a family with this disease, never got help as a child, but then got help as an adult and is now teaching these boys and girls? So our very own Cynthia Galaviz, who's a supervisor of the Hazel and Betty Ford California program, was interviewed. Sesame Street brought out their crew. It was in early June, and they filmed Cynthia, but they also filmed a little boy, 7 years old, who was a veteran of the children's program, a card-carrying alumni of HBFF, front and center. They interviewed the dad. That'll be on the site. And then we've written a number of articles. One of the articles he asked me to write, for parents especially, is in recovery, how do we rebuild that trust?
Yes.
How do we begin to heal that relationship that has gone through so much as a result of this awful disease? And the thing I'm most excited about, honestly, is when you go to that section of their website, which is almost finished, the development is just about there will be a direct link to the Hazel and Betty Ford Children's Program.
Beautiful.
And so my hope is so many other boys and girls of all ages are going to get help, and that more adults, professionals, and family members look to us at the Hazel and Betty Ford Children's Program as the go-to resource.
And what will happen when a child or a parent at home is watching Sesame Street and sees this connection and reaches out to the website, but they can't make that trip out to the children's program? What about resources in their own community? How will we make sure that they still get help even if they can't get to the children's program?
Sure, and today our children's program at Hazel and Betty Ford is in California at the Betty Ford Center. Right. It's in Denver. Where it started, Denver, Colorado. But now we're in the Twin Cities.
Minnesota.
We're in Minnesota, and we have been in Center City. We'll have a program in Plymouth that is beginning.
Suburban Minneapolis.
But we'll also be in St. Paul. So we want to bring this program all over the place. But what we believe and what the research and evaluation of our program tells us, and it's a great program, but like all programs of recovery, continuing care is the crucial bit. And so we pretty much have resources in virtually every community across the nation that we would refer parents or grandparents or children to. So if we've got a call from someone, let's say from Birmingham, Alabama, we know of a program much closer to home. We know of therapists that are close by. I mean, if you think about it, William, we're talking about almost 1 out of every 3 kids in the United States today.
1 out of every 3.
Almost 1 out of every 3. And the irony is so many of them believe they're the only one.
Yeah.
And so we need more programming all across the United States. And Dr. DeLisi, who works through publishing, through our professional education solutions, maybe the children's program will begin to interface, and we can go out to places like Ohio and Kentucky, where we really know that the opioid heroin epidemic is so huge, and begin to train other people so they can do it right in their local communities.
Collaboration, that's what it's
Collaboration
all about.
is always the key.
Collaboration with Sesame Street and the children's program at Hazel and Betty Ford, collaboration with other treatment providers, collaboration in communities.
And when you look at our brand new strategic plan 2020, so much of it is based on partnership and collaboration. And I'm so excited about that.
So am I, Jerry. Thank you so much for bringing your passion, your steadfast commitment, and your clinical expertise to really our most vulnerable people in this country, the next generation, and for helping to strengthen them. We thank you for being with us today. Jerry Moe, the Executive Director of the National Children's Program at the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation, talking about the collaboration with Sesame Street. I'm your host, William Moyers, and on behalf of Lisa Stangl and all of us at Hazel and Betty Ford, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again on another edition of Let's Talk.